Hi, editing Amanda from the future here. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that this interview was recorded on Zoom rather than our usual platform, Riverside. This was due to a strong preference from our guests to go ahead and record it on Zoom instead of Riverside, which they had never recorded on before. As a result, the audio and video quality may be a little different than what you're used to. Zoom records as one main huge lump. Riverside records in different audio, so I can do things like balance the audio or do the multi cameras you're used to. You're not going to see that today. It's just going to be one long shot. And the audio is what the audio is, unfortunately. Hopefully, you'll still get a lot of amazing stuff out of this and you'll enjoy hearing from Russell. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, this is Rita, and this is me and my mommy's podcast, and then my mommy, and there's me, and I'm just talking about this stuff, and there's me tap dancing, because this is the tap dancing autism podcast, and there's a bunch of animals, and I'll be trying to eat my hair, and there's a bunch of sand in the ocean. Also, there's all the soul talk stuff, I love all my ninjas and and also, yes, like life stuff and tap dancing. Oh, and also there's my boots. My boots are amazing. Also, there's me, trying not to have a panic attack. Also, this is a podcast about me, autism, and tap dancing, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just ADHD in this thing. Also, there's my cute, adorable puppies.
Do you think you can introduce the podcast?
That's my mom. I am me. This is
Russell?
yeah.
She's still working on the introductions. Russell, thanks for coming on Lead Us Tap Styles today. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Russell van Bracklen. I'm a New York State Senate funded researcher for dyslexia, and I have extreme dyslexia myself. I ended up going to law school to audit classes with a first grade reading level, and 3 weeks later, I was reading better than any of my classmates, actually getting perfect hundreds in all my quizzes. It was a baptism by fire that I will never forget.
A lot of people don't understand what dyslexia is. When I tell them Lita has severe dyslexia, they're like, oh, so she just needs to concentrate harder so the words don't float around on the page. Do you mind kind of explaining what dyslexia is?
Sure, but I want everybody to understand the source. This is a book that came out in 2003. This is a later edition called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz from Yale. So what I'm about to describe is the first couple of 100 pages, and we now know based on brain imaging. So essentially what's going on is for general education students, the back part of their brain is massively active. There's almost no neural activity for the dyslexic brain back over here. But the front part of the brain, we have approximately 2.5 times the neural activity. So I'm now greatly going to oversimplify some very complicated neuroscience so we can get some benefit out of it. The front part of the brain, according to Yale, deals with 2 areas, articulation and word analysis. But essentially, that's how we overcome it. But essentially what's happening is I'm going to ask Lita a question, and this is going to exemplify what dyslexia is at its core. So Lita, I understand you're really into dancing. So here's my question. In your speciality, when you're thinking about dancing, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed? Key question, but with little to no organization. Does that sound familiar?
When I'm not dancing.
Well, when you're thinking about dancing, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with very little organization?
No.
Okay, that doesn't sound familiar?
She blacks out when she's tap dancing. Like she just does it so much from muscle memory by the time she gets on stage, she can't remember being on stage.
Okay. Let me ask you a different question, Lita. When you're thinking about talking to somebody else about dancing, when you're thinking about maybe writing something or saying something about it, do you have ideas flying around your head really fast, but with little to no organization?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the problem in its core. So what's happening is the front of her brain is thinking so rapidly, so quickly, trying to organize our thoughts become extremely difficult. So the question then becomes, how do we go about fixing that? Well, when I talked to a bunch of very successful dyslexic professors, by that I mean they went to typical schools and not to dyslexic special schools, and they ended up having the following academic career. They struggled against their eventual peers horribly during K through 12, horribly during their first 2 years of college, a little better their last two years of college, but once they entered their PhD program, they're top of their class day one. Every time I ask that. So what I drew from that, from a practical point of view, is number one, for most of us that are dyslexic, we really like to specialize. We're generally very good in a very, very narrow area. Number two, what I've learned from the professors is that they like to learn from the specific to the general, not the general to the specific. So let me kind of explain that. Imagine we're talking about Martin Luther King, and you ask the standard question, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous dream speech have on the 1960 civil rights movement? You ask that to a dyslexic, we have just no idea what to do because we have nothing to latch onto. But if we go ahead and we ask what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous I Have a Dream speech, well, then we have something we can latch onto, and we can then think in a linear order. It kind of forces us to organize our thoughts. And once that happens, spelling improves, grammar improves, the whole thing just gets a lot easier. And then we go again, back to Yale's book. What they recommend is articulation first, followed by word analysis. What I found is that works exceptionally well for the most motivated, intelligent student who on the path to college with excellent family support. That works fantastic for them. But for a lot of other students, what we need to do is to switch that around, focus on word analysis first, followed by articulation. And once you do that, and you focus on what a student's very interested in and teach them from the specific to the general, then you'll find that our learning is optimized because that's how our brain works. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Are you following, kiddo, or have we gotten a little down the rabbit hole for you? She's like,
Let's start off with a very practical example. So, Lita, I understand that you have some concerns when it comes to writing. Is that correct?
she's nodding
Okay.
yes. She gets a little, she's been bullied by dance teachers over her writing skills. And so she's a little self-conscious over it.
Well, I'm going to now take everything that I just showed you, and I'm going to show you a little trick on how to write a basic 3-word sentence. Why that? Well, when I was presenting at the Everyone Reading Conference in New York City, what I was asked by a special ed teacher is, a lot of my kids are writing a bunch of what appear to be randomly placed misspelled words. I don't even know where to begin. So now we're going to make this very simple with everything that I just told you. So let's first of all start off on Lita, something you really, really love, and that's dancing, correct? Okay. So imagine
Podcast,
that
you do
we
have
were
to talk.
imagine we were typing this out. Okay. So I'd have you type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? Then we're going to exchange hero for Lita. Lita plus sign. What are we talking about? Lita plus sign dancing. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So now here's my question, Lita. Do you like or dislike dancing?
Like,
Okay. So now we're going to replace the plus sign and we have Lita like dancing. Does that sound generally correct to you, or does that sound a little off?
that sounds like no human being would say that.
Okay. Lita like dancing. No human would say that. What's wrong with it?
It sounds like a robot.
It sounds like a robot. Okay. I'm going to say it a little more naturally. Lita like dancing. Does that sound grammatically correct to you, or does that sound a little off?
Still off.
How would we fix that?
Likes to dance?
Okay. Lita likes to dance. Now, do you see how you added an S to that when I asked you? Does it sound correct? And then you added another word too. Lita likes to dance?
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we do is we practice that with 10 likes and 10 dislikes. You type that out. And then do you think you'd have that down?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, some students will do it, will get it in 20 tries. If not, we try another 20. So what I'd have you do is to create a list of 10 things you really like and 10 things you really don't like. But did you see what you just did? You said Lita likes to dance. Doesn't sound like a robot. You fixed it. Have you ever noticed that you're really good with advanced vocabulary when you really want to try?
I don't know.
Let me ask your mom, does Lita have a really good advanced vocabulary? You said she had something along those lines that's at the college level?
She does have a really advanced vocabulary. She has grown up with, she's screaming at me. She has me for a mother. She's grown up around academia. She's grown up around lawyers. And you just pick up that advanced vocabulary when you're with that group.
Okay. So do you see what Lita did? Lita like dancing, sounds like a robot. No human would say that. Lita likes to dance. So what she did is she added the S. Why is that important? Because the predominant program used in private dyslexic schools are 80,000 a year that take 4 to 5 years to solve students' academic concerns, is they use Orton Gillingham, which is seeing, touching, hearing, multi-senses. And what Lita just did is not only did she solve it the way it's typically done by adding the S, she did something that very few students do. She added an additional word. Lita, instead of Lita likes dancing, Lita likes to dance. See how much better that was? And all I had to do was to ask her to fix it. So now when you're practicing the 10 likes and 10 dislikes, you have her type out what she's doing. Here's the key thing. You tell her before she puts a period down, she can ask any question. So if she mistyped dance, then she just has to retype dance. However, if you put the period down and there's a misspelled word or there's a major grammatical mistake, then I'd say, Lita, you made a mistake and now you got to retype the entire sentence. And what you're going to notice is she's going to keep making the same mistake. And then eventually she's going to hyper concentrate, really focus. And before you know it, she's going to do it correct. And you practice that until you got 20 times correct with 10 likes and 10 dislikes. Then we go ahead and we say, because reason 1. So Lita, why do you like to dance? Give me a good reason.
It's fun.
Because it's fun. Lita likes to dance because it's fun. So then what we would have her do is type that out. And again, the same thing. If there's a misspelled word, she can ask questions before she puts the period down. If she made a mistake after the period's down, she'd have to retype the entire sentence. And what you find is she's going to hyper focus to not keep making those mistakes, doesn't have to keep retyping. And then with practice, she types it out perfectly. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you, kiddo?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go for 2 reasons. So Lita, give me a good reason on why you like to dance besides it's fun.
I can make goofy movements.
You can make goofy movements. So Lita likes to dance because it's fun and she can make goofy movements. Same thing. If she, before she drops the period, she can ask any question, but after the period's dropped, if she made a spelling mistake or a major grammatical mistake, then she has to retype it until it's correct. And again, she's going to hyper focus, and that's where the magic happens. Now we're going to do one more reason. So you gave me 2 reasons so far. Give me one more good reason.
That's adorable babies.
Okay. Lita likes to dance because it's fun, comma, she gets to make goofy movies, there is a comma or not a comma, depending on your opinion of the Oxford comma. And what was the last reason?
There's adorable babies.
There are adorable babies. All right. We have her type it out. She can ask questions until she knows she's got it right, or she can drop the period. She has to keep retyping it until it's correct. And now, what do you have? A basic 3-reason sentence that can take Lita from, let's say she's starting off at kindergarten or first grade. If she can do that, depending on who you ask, that is either advanced second grade. Some people say beginning of third grade, but I'm just going to say advanced second grade. So you now just jumped writing by an entire grade level or two just by going through that simple process. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. You following, kiddo? She's nodding that she's following.
Okay. Now, here's another little secret. If you can write a word, you can read a word. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you? She's nodding.
Okay. Okay. Now, here is where we're going to take advantage of Lita's vast vocabulary. Would it surprise you if I told you that dyslexics, once properly trained, tend to be able to read much deeper and find subtle errors that a lot of their classmates who are shooting to be valedictorian tend to miss? Would that kind of shock you?
It doesn't, only because I'm working with the twice exceptional community on dance, and the fact that these kids are pushing past all those language things. It sounds weird, but once we can get them starting on the language, they just jump past their peers.
So here's the next step, and I tend to have dyslexic students stay on this process for at least 3 to 6 months. And what we're trying to do is to build a vocabulary of literally hundreds of evolved words. Okay? Literally hundreds. And that's the basis to see Lita's reading level jump by multiple grade levels. But before we do that, I want to illustrate a really important point. What is the one subject in school that Lita absolutely detests?
Probably reading.
No, but like not reading or writing, but an actual subject.
She likes them all, unbelievably enough.
Okay. What's a subject to study that Lita really doesn't like?
What do you not like that you're, because it's got to be something your dad's working with you on, because you like everything I work with you on.
I like everything.
Okay. Is there anything that you find really boring?
My dad.
It's geography. Would geography be your worst subject, you think?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that you really, really dislike?
Ballet.
You don't like ballet?
She hates it with a passion.
It's evil.
Okay. What is your emotional reaction if you had to go and read a 1,000-page book on ballet and then work on writing on it for the next 3 years?
I'm gonna have a funeral.
So you wouldn't want to do that. You would actually rebel against doing that work.
Yeah, she would.
Okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure my mother wouldn't torture me and make me where I was dead in the grave before my 14th birthday.
Okay. So here's a key point. When you're dealing with most dyslexics, what you want to do is to focus on their speciality. So you said you really like to dance. What's your favorite type of dancing? Tap. Okay. So I'm going to change it. Let's say we're going to have you read materials on how to be a better tap dancer, how to teach tap dancing better. Okay. Would that be something you'd be eager to work on?
Yes.
Okay. So parents, I cannot overemphasize this enough. You just saw this very plainly. If you step outside of your child's speciality during the intervention period, which takes them from where they are to grade level or beyond in reading and writing, you're going to be going from enthusiasm to eh. And if you go into something they really don't like, as Lita said, her mom's not going to put in grade before she's 14. That
She hates
is,
ballet.
yeah, that is what you really need to understand. And here's just where, as dyslexics, we clash with school systems. Our school systems want us to become well-rounded individuals before we specialize. And as you just saw with Lita, we just want to specialize. So in that intervention period, number one, focus on what the kids are really interested in. Pick a book, an audio book that they're interested in. Number two, we're going to learn from the specific to the general. And number three, we're going to start off with word analysis followed by articulation, which I'm about to go into. So does all that make sense?
That makes sense. Are you following that, kiddo? You're like, as long as you don't say ballet again, I'm good. Can you tell she hates ballet?
Okay. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to walk you through what I call the half circle process. It involves a hero wanting to do something. We start with a base universal theme. Then we come up with a final universal theme. And then we pick an optimum villain. And that's going to create a simple sentence. So we're going to start off with hero is Lita. And then Lita's going to want to do something. So Lita, tell me in one sentence what you would like to do in relation to tap dancing.
Teach a puppy how to tap dance.
Teach your puppy how to tap dance. We can go ahead and start with crazy because Lita, if we're talking about something kind of crazy, is that going to keep you more interested?
Yes.
Okay. So again, we're going back to the speciality. Anything we can do to keep the dyslexic student more interested, we want to go in that direction. All right. So we have the basic sentence, wants to train a puppy to tap dance. There's two types of words we're looking for. The first type of word is called an action word. It takes the hero and moves her generally in the direction she wants to go. And then we have the most important word. Okay. What is the action word in Lita wants to train a puppy to tap dance? That's not an easy question.
It is not.
You want to give it a shot or would you like me to help you out?
The second one?
Okay. Wants. Can you see how wants takes you in the general direction you want to go? Okay. Now, the next one is the most important word. What's the most important word of that sentence as far as getting you to what you want to do? And again, that's not an easy question. Lita wants to train a puppy to tap dance. Do you want to take a shot or help you out?
Second one?
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. I studied under Professor James Collins at SUNY Center at Buffalo, and what he found with $1.5 million in federal research grants is that when you start working with struggling writers, is you almost do it for them, and then as they get more and more practice, you give them less and less support until they're running on their own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the most important word is train. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So which way do you want to go? Want or train?
Train.
Train. And that's typically what happens. So what we would have you do is we would ask the dyslexic student, do you want to go with the action word or the most important word? And normally I recommend the more complicated word, and you automatically picked it. Okay, train. So that is now our base universal thing. Why am I doing this? Again, I'm going to keep coming back to the research in this book. The front part of the brain is 2.5 times overactive. And when I switch it over from articulation to word analysis followed by articulation. So word analysis, do we want to go with want or train? That is word analysis. Does that make sense, Lita? Okay. Next step is that's our base universal thing. So then what I would do is I'd have you go to Marion's College Dictionary online, and you would go and pick your definition that you wanted for train. I'd have you type out the word, type out the definition. Does that make sense? Now, here's a key point. Because we're trying to keep this to you as interesting as possible, and for you to fully understand what train means by typing out the word and the definition, that's some work. But if we're doing it in something you're really interested in, are you willing to do the work? Okay.
She's nodding.
That's the key point. Because I have parents say all the time, "Oh, my dyslexic child will never do that." I'm like, well, if you're outside the speciality, you're right. And for Lita, if we're doing something in ballet, absolutely not. Okay. She would actually get up and try to walk away from the computer. But if we're doing something she's very interested in, then the student's willing to do the work. Okay. So then what we would do is typically what happens is it's a very broad definition. And then we would go to the thesaurus and we would try to find a word that best matches what's in her brain. So that means we'd start off and maybe you're doing 5 at a time, 10 at a time. Some really motivated students will do the whole 30 or 40 words, whatever it is. But most will start off with 5 or 10. You type out the word, type out the definition that you chose, and then you'd find the one that best matches what's in your head. Does that make sense? Okay. And once you go through that process, once you typed out the word train and the definition you chose, I don't know if it's 3 times, I don't know if it's 20 times. Sometime you're going to remember that word for the rest of your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then once we find that better word, that's what we call our post-universal thing. And then from that, let's just use the word train. All right, so Lita, we have to pick our optimum villain. What person or concept would best prevent you from training a puppy to tap dance? Who could just come and say, Lita, you're not teaching a puppy to tap dance, and you would have to obey that? Who would that be?
Weird old person.
What's that?
Weird mean boomer.
Weird
Okay.
mean boomers. She is definitely Gen Alpha.
Okay. So that is our villain. So then we would have Lita, train, weird, not nice boomers. And then I would ask her again to read that out loud so it sounded correct. And then there you go. Okay. And then you would spend about 3 to 6 months on this. And she would develop a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. And she could do this on her own, especially we found a book on tap dancing that she liked with an audiobook. Or if that doesn't work, we could create the content with artificial intelligence. I prefer the ChatGPT 03 model. That's the best one out there now as of June 2025. All right. And then there is app called Speechify created by a dyslexic. I know it's $150 a year approximately, but that allows you to select your narrator and you can control the speed of it. That's the second way around it. Okay. So doing that until she develops a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. Now, what happens? Her reading level is you're going to see jumped up by multiple grade levels really fast. And that's a starting point. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you, kiddo? She's nodding.
Okay. Now, Lita, would you mind telling me why tap dancing is so good and why ballet is so bad?
In tap dance, I get to make a lot of noise. And no one's mean. And in ballet, they're like super, super, super dumb. Also, who tells a bunch of 9-year-olds to eat a salad and that they're all fat? How does nobody think that will give 9-year-olds an eating disorder?
All right. Now, do you see where I just gave you ballet and tap, and then I asked you reasons? That's articulation. And you see how you were able to articulate really well? Those were good reasons you gave me?
LOL.
Well, do you think those were good reasons and why you think ballet is bad?
Yeah.
Yes, those were very good reasons. So again, we're following the formula where we have that massive overactivity. All right. So that's just a starting point. So what did we just discuss in this short period of time? You now understand if your child's writing is your dyslexic child's writing, as one of the special ed teachers said in New York City at the Everyone Reading Conference, my students are writing a bunch of randomly placed misspelled words. I don't know what to do. Well, I just showed you how to get to end of second, beginning of third grade. And then with the half circle process, you follow that. And again, you show your child what to do. You sit them down with their material. And they generally do this on their own after they get used to it. 3 to 6 months later, they have a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. Within a matter of a month or so, it could be dozens. And then what happens? You see a huge jump in your reading ability. And that's just the beginning. Did you have any questions about that?
Do you have any questions, kiddo?
No.
It sounds, if you're willing to do it, it's a lot of hard work, but it sounds easy. And I know the hard work and the easy shouldn't be in the same sentence, but
But again, did you notice that we were talking to Lita about tap dance? Yes, we step out of that. We step into ballet. And as she said, my mom's not going to put me in a grave before I'm 14.
yeah, but it sounds like the ADHD is connecting with the autism today. It sounds super easy if you're willing to put in the work.
Yes. And what I'm trying to tell you is it's a lot of work and the amount of repetition. When I asked Lita, when we go and look at that definition, how many times do you have to retype it until you know it? When I said it could be 3, it could be 20. I'm not joking about that. The repetition is massive. The first program I did, this is what the New York State Senate funded. I was just curious. I said, we took our best and brightest dyslexics. These were high school juniors and seniors with the following 4 criteria. They were incredibly intelligent, massively motivated, exceptional family support, and they were college bound. When we did that in a public school in New York City, it was the Averill Park Central School District, and they started with 1 class period a day for the school year. At the beginning, they scored in the 0 to 6 percentile on the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment. That pretty much assumes a completed college education or close to it. And at the end, they scored in the 30th to 70th percentile. And what that meant is it predicted when they went to college a 2.5 to 3.5 GPA. What happened? They all went to college. They all graduated with GPAs between 2.5 to 3.6, no accommodations. And before they started the program, their writing was at the middle school level.
Repetition is so important in everything you do. We have some dance families who are like, my kid isn't where Lita's at. And I'm like, they just started and you don't know how long she is spending on tap every single day. She spends hours polishing up those tap steps every single day. If you're just in here one day a week, you're not going to be where she is. Plus, she's had 7 years of doing this and your kid just started.
Yes. And there is the crux. The translation to overcoming your reading and writing issues is I just gave you a simple formula. I kind of explained the science behind it. However, the amount of repetition is so incredibly, it's just required. And that again, why when I said to Lita, tap dancing, she's willing to do the work. You step out of that, discuss ballet, no. Okay.
I tried to tell some of her dance teachers now that she's in her own studio, she does not have to do ballet. She has to help in the baby ballet class because we're limited on helpers, but there's babies, so she's okay. But when she was in traditional studios, they're like, why can't she just get over her, I don't like ballet? And I'm like, I don't think you understand the neurodivergent mind, you guys.
Exactly. But here's something I'm sure Lita would never do. She would never tell a very young 2-year-old, you have to eat salad because you're fat. Right, Lita? You would never say that?
I have sanity and I know what a child's mind is.
Exactly. Okay. So again, we're coming back to that speciality. So whatever your child's speciality is, for Lita, it's tap dancing. For all the other kids I've had, this is my most popular biography. I have started this with 10-year-olds. All 1,000 pages of it. That's at the advanced high school level. But the kids really want to know, what's the magic of Disney? It's 2 universal themes. I've taught George Washington through World War II to Martin Luther King. All right. The student has to be incredibly interested, or it just doesn't work. And when you send your child to school, what do? Everything is just about outside their speciality, and you wonder why it's not working.
She's homeschooled, so everything has kind of been pushed towards making it where she likes the topic or she's not going to learn the topic.
Exactly. So you're doing, because you're homeschooling and you understand that most important fact, you can be far more productive than teachers that have a 6 years of higher education, 4-year undergrad, 2 years master's, and yet the job's not getting done, because that is the number one issue, getting outside their speciality. It's literally that simple.
Yeah. Because even that's why she was having a hard time figuring out what subject she doesn't like, because we're always going, okay, you're not learning this way, then we'll do it this way.
Exactly. So for any of the moms out there, do you have any questions that aren't clear or anything else?
I think it was pretty clear to me. Was it pretty clear to you?
I hang around your scientists. Yes.
That is, she
Okay.
listens to way too many papers and scientific arguments over whose paper is right.
Okay. So if any of the parents out there want to learn more about that, you can just simply come and visit me at dyslexiaclasses.com, and we'll be happy to set up a time to discuss things with you, a free 15-minute appointment to go over things with, just like I went over with Lita, and see if this might be something you'd be interested in.
We will make sure to include that in the description below. We will also have it on our website with our guests who have been on the podcast, where we keep a short bio of all the guests that are on the podcast. So you should be able to find that information pretty easily, audience.
All right, so thanks for having me on. Thanks, Lita.
Can you say thank you? Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show, Russell.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, thank you for watching the podcast, and please subscribe, and also look at that adorable paper. So if you want to subscribe for it, and also please leave a like, and don't forget, if you subscribe to our stuff, you won't miss any of our new podcast stuffies. And also, did you see that adorable paper? Don't you like it?